Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome back to our next session of today's beauty and personal care discussion at the Healthspan Show. Really pleased to have you on board with us today. And we have some wonderful experts who are going to talk us through their space. Now, I must apologize for missing a couple of panelists in this session, but we have some wonderful speakers for you to cover today's discussion. Before we get going, as I'm sure many of you have seen today, my name's Angela Tyrrell. I'm an SVP with LSX and in charge of the program for the Healthspan Show. I've really been diving deep into these topics over the last 12 months and very, very excited to be a part of the active discussion today. I'm going to ask our wonderful panel to introduce themselves. I'm going to hand over, first of all, please, to Anindya Dasgupta. Anindya, can you give us a few words about yourself and how you come at this space?
Yeah, thanks, Angela, and thanks, Greg, as well for joining. Hi, so my name is Anindya Dasgupta. I work in Unilever in the R&D area. I actually lead a small work stream of the microbiome research in the beauty and personal care based out of Bangalore. I have been with Unilever for 11 years now. I'm actually trained as a virologist and an immunologist with my PhD and postdoc degrees. But, last 6 or 7 years, along with doing virology, I've taken up keen interest in microbiome as well. And, still learning as the field evolves. It's been very exciting. And so a pleasure joining.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anindya. And Greg, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. I think I'd also like to mention that Anindya is in Bangalore, India right now. Angela is in the UK, and I am in Michigan. This morning we had a sleet warning here. It's just so cold. It's not supposed to be like this. So I work for Amway Corporation, located in Ada, Michigan. And I'm a biochemist. My focus of research is in the skin microbiome. So Anindya and I have a lot of great conversations together about the microbiome and the impact of COVID and hygiene habits and practices and how they've changed the world. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion today, and I hope it's a lively discussion. I encourage the audience to ask as many questions as possible. It makes for us to have a lot more fun in this next 50 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And yes, just a reminder to the audience, please feel free to ask questions and comments. You can use the live discussion box on the event platform to put your questions in writing, and we'll do our best to address them as the conversation continues. But before we dive straight in, the topic of this panel is looking at the rise of holistic hygiene and how it's disrupting the skincare market. And I wonder if you could both address for me, when we talk about holistic hygiene, what is that to you? What are you thinking about? And Anindya, let's start with you.
Right. I think obviously COVID completely exploded hygiene, like probably never before. And probably we are going to see, and that's something we can discuss later, how long are we going to see this? I won't steal Greg's thunder. He had a very interesting term, so I'll save it for Greg to share. Look, I mean, hygiene is something which is embedded in, at least, from a Unilever point of view, it's embedded in our purpose, right? I mean, Unilever was founded in the late 19th century by Sir William Hesketh Lever, who's based out of Port Sunlight, and the Sunlight soap really was the first hygiene product in the world. There were soaps before, but making cleanliness a daily part of everybody's routine was really the mantra and the purpose of the company. And remember, this was Victorian England. There were a lot of tropical diseases as well there. Cholera was a big problem, and so was it in the rest of the world. And I think, some very basic hygiene really helped alleviate a lot of diseases, not only in this part of the world, but in the Western world as well. And I think we are at a point where, and I'm talking pre-COVID, we were at a point where hygiene was almost a given thing in the Western world, okay? And places like Japan and Australia and Singapore. Not so much here, but the benefits of a good hygiene practice, like wash your hands 5 times a day on 5 occasions, these became almost a globally and universally accepted thing. It doesn't matter if it was Unilever or Procter and Gamble or anybody else. This was something that everybody was trying to achieve, and everybody worked not only with, amongst themselves, within themselves, but also with governments, NGOs, educational institutes to progress this. So that's how I, see hygiene. Now, the second part is, what is holistic hygiene, right? So I think since the advent of the understanding of the microbiome, really, be it the gut, be it your skin, we've also started to understand that, not all the germs are bad. When you wash your hands, yes, it's absolutely essential to remove the pathogenic bacteria and viruses, etc. But it's not like sterilizing the skin, because that could have its deleterious effects later. And that's where I think holistic hygiene, it's a very fine balance of, immediate health and long-term health. That's how I see it.
So it's really about balancing, keeping your skin free of bad germs. And as we've seen, as you've mentioned, our COVID virus, one of the best defenses we have is continued washing of our hands. But then also making sure that we're maintaining skin health long-term. We're making sure we're using the products that continue to do that, as well as keep us clean, essentially. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. And Greg, can you feed in on that?
Yeah, hygiene, as the primary kind of thought that comes through my mind is cleansing, as Anindya just mentioned, and sanitization to mitigate pathogens is a good thing. And during the past pandemics of humankind, this has always been kind of the number one method to try to mitigate the spread of influenza in 1918 or cholera or and the other pandemics that have come across the globe. But the other one is social isolation and distancing and quarantining, and in this case, school shutdowns and bubbles. These are affecting this is if you think of holistic hygiene, this is another part of our hygiene, is to distance ourselves from other people. What this does is eliminate the transfer of microorganisms from person to person, and in the case of pathogens, that's why COVID is mitigated. However, our biodiversity, the diversity of our microorganisms in our body, will suffer because of that lack of interaction. Not to mention the anxiety and stress that can occur from social isolation, and the mental effects of that on the microbes of our body is not understood. So it's a two-edged sword. Hygiene with sanitization, trying to balance the disruption to the skin barrier from the surfactants in the cleansers. That 70% alcohol over and over again daily will cause the skin barrier to be disrupted. It'll cause skin dryness, dermatitis. It's well recognized that healthcare workers who have to wash their hands on a regular basis are much more prone to dermatitis. So one of the solutions to that is moisturization to help the barrier repair faster. So in this period of time where hand washing has become so frequent, the use of hand moisturization kind of comes hand in hand. I guess the other part here is the going back to the social isolation and working from home. People, their diets are changing, some for the better, some for the worse. Alcohol consumption has skyrocketed. What effect is that having on our societies and our bodies? I know my wine consumption has gone up quite a bit the last year, so it is if we think about the cleansing part, but there's secondary and tertiary impacts here, and it's very complicated, and then how all that affects a person's immune system to ward off an infection. Are we kind of, it's been shown that populations in in parts of the world that have less hygiene actually had less infectivity with COVID. And so there was an inverse relationship between hygiene and COVID infectivity, with a suggestion that the people in those less hygienic areas had better immune systems because of their kind of exposure. So the hygiene hypothesis that we are being too clean was kind of bearing out in that epidemiology. The recent surge in India may be another variant, but anyway, that's my holistic thoughts on the holistic hygiene during COVID.
A lot to unpick there, and I have to say, as the parent of a toddler, I really cling to this idea that our immune systems are boosted by them picking up and eating all sorts of things. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And Anindya, you're going to say,
if I can just add to what Greg was saying, it's really fascinating how something from a skin microbiome or skin health point of view, totally innocuous can still affect it. Greg brought up this whole thing about the stress related to COVID, and people going for more easy food or almost like comfort food, right? Which are quite rich in saturated fats, refined carbohydrates. Add to that the lack of physical activity, right? And these all actually have a profound effect on your immune cells, the Th1, Th2 type of cells. And that can actually have a recurring effect on the skin health itself. So, you would not really directly associate, lockdown, food, and skin health, but there is, and there's actually reports now out there which shows that during this entire COVID lockdown period, skin irritation, skin itching, has gone up due to excessive use of these, hygiene products, as well as the change of people's diets.
We haven't even talked about masks yet.
We're
True,
definitely getting to
true.
that. I know you've got some wonderful work to discuss with us here, Greg. I wanted to stick a little bit on this concept of over sanitizing, because obviously it's, you know, it's something that I think the idea of sanitizing has really accelerated in our consciousness. I had a sun cream company this morning speaking, saying, you know, they would never have thought it, but they've started to bring out hygiene products as well, just because of the way that the world has adapted. We've touched a little bit on this concept of over sanitization, and you're obviously both very well respected microbiome scientists. I'm interested to explore a little bit more on, I suppose, the impact that you're seeing this rise in hygiene practices and sanitation potentially having on the microbiome. Is there an effect? If so, what is it? If not, is there a misconception there, and how are consumers starting to see this space of what was, you know, a real accelerating area was the field of the skin microbiome? Are you seeing a change at all as a result of the last 12 months? Anindya, I'll start with you.
Greg. Oh, well, I answer. Yeah. Greg, would you like to? I'll follow up.
I guess, yeah, the rise in sanitation in homes, hard surfaces, cleaning, making sure that, you know, you clean your hands, but you better clean your phone too. You better clean your keyboard and your mouse and regularly. So otherwise it'll just, you know, the germs and stuff will just keep coming. I think, you know, I'm not sure what sanitization is going to be here for after COVID has, you know, long gone. We'll keep going with cleansing ourselves and such. So over sanitization for the skin, as I mentioned, it can cause cracking and drying and itching. Worst case is breakage in the skin barrier, and scratching, and things like that. So there's a delicate balance between cleansing to remove the sebum and surface oil, other surface oils and debris that you kind of want to clean your skin, certain pathogens, and the other side of the coin, disrupting the stratum corneum barrier function. So using properly formulated cleansers, you know, pH 5 to 6, soaps that are really highly alkaline, generally are a lot more irritating. Using cleansers that are just formulated to be gentle, if you need to use cleansers on a regular basis. And this is not just applied to the hands, it's the whole body. So, yeah.
Okay. And Anindya, are you happy to build on that?
Right. No, yes, I mean, I agree with Greg, what Greg said. You know, obviously there's been a tremendous use of these personal care products, and excessive use when not needed, you know, should be probably avoided. Yes, if you go out and you know, you're you know, holding a shopping cart or something, you come out, yes, you should probably, you know, from a public place, you should probably wash your hands and sanitize it. If you're watching TV at home for 3-4 hours, which I sometimes do if my wife and family daughter allows me to, and only touching the remote, which only I am touching, right? Then there's no need for that. So I think people should be prudent in their use of products. What products, you know, something like which Greg was saying, you know, which is maybe less harsher on the skin is probably sometimes good. They also, at the same time, we have to keep in mind that, you know, a lot of places for a lot of people, there's also a question of affordability, right? So, you use products which, are affordable is the mantra of a lot of people. So all these are very complex issues.
Yeah.
But to what Greg had said, at the beginning is, the use of moisturization of hands, or other parts of the body to prevent the cracking due to excessive use of these products. That's needed. I mean, healthcare workers are a case in point, right? I mean, even before COVID, every time you see a patient, you have to wash your hands. How many times you do that? Many times, right? And so they do have to apply moisturizer. And in this case, probably we almost have to follow their practice.
I wanted to ask you both then, do you think this message is filtering through to consumers? And conversely, do you think brands are adapting to, what we've, as you've seen these changes in this space, but I think also more detailed, like you say, what are people sterilizing in their own homes? How are they interacting with their environment? Do you think consumers understand quite what a sensible, holistic, hygienic regime looks like? And do you think brands are doing enough to adapt to help them come on that journey?
So, good questions. I think, look, since I would say the last 10, 12 years, consumers have been getting on board with that concept, in terms of holistic hygiene, that these things can have deleterious effect on your skin and your health in general. And people were looking at products which would get rid of the bad but still sustain the good or something. I think COVID has made this, from a consumer point of view, gone for a toss a little bit, and for good reason. Look, you don't want to take chances, absolutely not. And this is the, and every health agency, be it CDC, be it World Health Organization, three things, obviously, right? Maintain social distance, wear mask, wash your hands, right? That has been the three almost truths of preventing this disease. So I see a period when they would know subconsciously in their mind that this might be, but this is maybe say that this is not the time. Let's get rid of the immediate danger. We will look at the other part later.
Yeah.
So that's from the consumer point of view. From a product point of view, also, I think companies are adapting. Obviously, when the pandemic hit first, obviously the shelves were almost getting empty. People were just buying things like crazy, sanitizers, soaps, and at that point, I don't think any company really wanted to hold back on hygiene products. But I think it will evolve, and as we move along, we will see more products in the market that would be holistic hygiene. Now, having said that, I must say that there have been a few opportunists, if I may say, without naming any company or anybody, small, big, whatever, I have seen several ridiculous propositions from products, which saying, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't wash your hands, etc., etc. So in the interest of public health, we should be also cognizant of those as well.
Maintaining a united front and a consistent message.
Yeah.
And Greg, you touched earlier on the use of masks and how this is having an impact. And we threw the term around of mask acne earlier in our prep call. Can you explain a little bit about what is meant by that and how you think brands are responding?
Absolutely. So this is my N95 mask. It's one that I used in a clinical study to actually look at the effect of wearing a mask on the facial skin microbiome. And we just presented that as a e-poster at the Society of Investigative Dermatology meeting last week. And we didn't know what to expect when we ran this study. We were, we've heard of and seen some pictures of healthcare workers and their facial skin as a result of wearing masks for extended periods of time, and ulceration of the skin. I mean, really serious negative effects to the skin condition. And so we were interested as if what would wearing a mask, especially in this region, all the humidity from the breathing, and just the nose and everything, which is normally open, and now it's being trapped right on your skin surface. What's it doing to the skin microbiome? And so we looked at that, and we did see a small increase in staph after 6 hours of wearing one of these N95 masks. C. acnes was unchanged, and diversity and composition overall, there was no significant effect. We did 2 days of treatment. First day was wearing the mask, and then on the second day, they wore the same mask. The subjects wore the same mask. So we tried to replicate a little bit about healthcare workers early on in the pandemic having to reuse their masks because there wasn't enough of these available.
Exactly.
So I think that the skin problems associated with masks, it's real. We weren't able to really show much effect on the skin microbiome, but I think if we had done longer, maybe a week, 2 weeks of continuously wearing a mask, and maybe using cloth mask instead of these kinds of masks, because this mask is sitting away from the skin. Most cloth masks, I don't have one here, are hugging the skin. And also depending on the type of material that the mask is made of. Is it a nice soft cotton, or is it a irritating kind of cotton mask, and so forth. So all of that comes into play with respect to the effect of wearing a mask on the skin. And we were talking earlier about as far as like social interactions between people, and you're having a social interaction while wearing a mask. It becomes kind of frustrating when they can't see if you're smiling or not. And so you have to smile with your eyes, and your eyes now become the new way to express your emotions, because people can't see the lower half of your face. So I think I've noticed a lot of on occasion, people with quite beautiful, more extravagant eye makeup and much more expression being produced in their eye area, which is fun. And I think that that's the one kind of like secondary aspect that happens when you start to do one thing, and then it causes all kinds of other things to happen. So.
And going to be very interesting to see how that starts to change over the next couple of years. Anindya, you had something to say there.
Yeah, no, I'll just follow up with Greg. So, yes, acne is one of the things, but there's so much more than just acne when you wear a mask. Some really, I wouldn't call them horrific because they're very touching. They're very touching pictures of healthcare workers removing their masks and showing what has happened to their face. Not just doctors, nurses, even the EMS folks, who drives the ambulances, takes people in, And it's just heartbreaking to see. I mean, yes, loss of life, everybody's aware of, but these small things, what it's doing to their skin, what it's doing to their appearances, when they go back to their families, it's just heartbreaking. So these are real concerns. Yes, of course, loss of life or illness is number one, but these also have their own effects.
Yeah. And do you see a world where brands start to respond to this? I mean, as you say, we were all really worried, and continue to be worried about the immediate effect of COVID and, the immediacy of it. But these are, like you said, the long-term things. Mask wearing is probably not going away for a lot of us.
Yeah.
What do you think, or how do you see brands responding?
I don't want to use this forum as an advertisement, but there's a lovely commercial by, and not just the commercial, actually the work also that Dove did in Canada. I can put it somewhere, you can have a look, but I'm sure other companies are doing as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can see we're getting a lot of questions in, so thank you for that. We'll get to them in just a moment, but I wanted to cover off one final sphere within this holistic hygiene concept that we haven't touched on yet. So it's Mental Health Week in the UK here, and I know when we were sort of in the height of our first lockdown, and we were locked, we weren't leaving our homes, we were scared, we were worried, and I invested a lot more certainly than I would ever spend traditionally on hand wash and moisturizer. And I found it gave me an immense, and continues to give me an immense sense of pleasure to use a really nice product on my hands and take a degree of ritual in washing my hands. And I was surprised at the impact that it had on my mental well-being. I wanted to ask you about, and Greg, you touched on the impact of stress and anxiety on the microbiome as well, whether you see any coming together of worlds between this concept of hygiene and this concept of mental well-being, both very, very important, both things that have really been accelerated as a result of the pandemic. Can either of you comment on the coming together of those worlds, whether there's a place for it, how you see products evolving as a result? Greg, I might start with you to put you on the spot there.
I think the confidence that one attains after doing a good hand washing, I mean, you feel like, okay, my hands are clean. I feel better that I did that. It goes internal, and I think cleaning not just your body, but other surfaces. We mentioned other hard surfaces in your home, keeping your home, sanitized and stuff like that, but not over sanitized. We don't need to go crazy with this. If you have children, it's good to get them exposed to microbes, especially outside microbes. Play in the dirt, get in the garden, get dirty. That's all very good. Play with your pets. Pets are great. They provide another avenue to enrich your microbiome. All the sanitation is going to kind of deplete our microbes. And so we have to kind of re-inoculate with exposure in other ways to the good microbes in our environment. So you've certainly heard a lot about go outside, be outside, do more outside during this lockdown. It's safe, and you'll be better for it mentally, physically, and spiritually, and so forth. And these are all great for your overall well-being and your quality of life.
Lovely answer. Anindya, can you build on top of that?
I think Greg has covered this one completely. Not much left to say. Yes, I think the other thing is also, the anxiety part. I'm sure if anybody had looked at serum cortisol levels and then a statistical analysis, they would have found a big difference, prior to lockdown and during lockdown. So I think that the overall health exercise, and when you're not exercising, obviously, what's that enzyme? What's that hormone called that makes, it's called the happy hormone? Forgot.
Oxytocin.
Anyway, no, it's endorphin, I think, endorphins.
Oh yeah, endorphins, okay.
Endorphins. So probably the endorphins are lower, the cortisol level is higher, and all of that has a tremendous influence, I'm sure, on your physiology internally, as well as externally. I'm sure, if you do and I know I'm biased towards the microbiome. If you look at the gut microbiome, and the stress, I am sure you'll see there is a big difference. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I've just posted that YouTube link.
Yes, thank you for that.
You could, yeah, it's a Dove commercial, but really just see the faces and hands and others of the healthcare workers, and it's really frightening.
Yeah, and I'll look forward to having a look, as I'm sure our audience will. Now, speaking of our audience, we have a few questions that have come in. So it'd be great to try and address them with the panel. So the first is looking at how we see the market gaining momentum in coming years as owing to changing regulatory scenarios, particularly robust government initiatives, which are likely to appear post-COVID. So, I mean, I'm taking from that looking
Sorry,
at...
my internet dropped for a second.
No, that's fine.
Can you repeat the question?
So how do we see the market gaining momentum in the coming years, owing to changing regulatory scenarios and robust government initiatives, which are likely to appear post-COVID? I suppose the first question is what sort of, none of us are policy people, but how, as scientists within, very impactful brands, how you foresee the market continuing to evolve in the next 5 years, with a heavy influence from what is government mandated hygiene, essentially.
Right. I think let's see what happened. Well, let's go back a few years. Okay, I think 2009, when the swine flu hit, parts of the world, right? If you look at Mintel or any other of these sites, you will see there was a humongous peak in the sale of hand sanitizers. You'll see this peak, and then it bottomed out, and then it steadied. But that steady, it was still higher. The delta was always higher than the pre H1N1 scare, and I think that you can almost see that happening even with COVID. So there is, Greg, you still haven't used your term, so I'm just waiting for your cue.
You mean hygiene hysteria?
Yes, thank you. Hygiene hysteria. So once that subsides, let's see. I still think for a number of years there will be an elevated hygiene consciousness. From hysteria, it will go to consciousness. How about that?
Well, one of the again side effects of all this is the prevalence of colds and flu have dropped to levels that have never been seen before.
True.
People are not getting colds.
Yep.
People are not getting the flu this year around the world. That could be a bad thing. Next year, I heard that it could skyrocket. But yeah. But the other there's everything's a balance. I was reading about school lockdowns and childhood obesity, and just obesity in general around the world. I've gained like 10, 15 pounds in the last year. Yeah. So it's there's always another side of the story to everything.
Yeah.
What was your second part of question? One was how you see products evolve. Regulatory. You had a second part.
So the second part was, do you see things evolving as a result of government initiatives or changing regulatory scenarios? We have political and policy-based oversight on our hygiene practices in a way that we've never really had, you know, in living memory. Do you see that starting to change? And you know, we're all from different countries, so obviously have different relationships with our government. But are you starting to? Do you envision a change there over the next 5 years?
From an FMCG perspective, hard to see that. I'm sure from pharma point of view, you will see quite a bit. I think in terms of regulatory requirements for vaccines, already there were a whole lot of changes made, right? I mean, if you stuck to the previous regimes of you know, clinical trials, I think we would not be where we are in terms of vaccines.
Yeah.
So I see quite a lot of changes happening in the pharma field. I'm not so sure about FMCG though.
Yeah. Greg,
Your thoughts? Yeah.
What comes to mind is just good education and trying to make sure that the science and the facts are communicated, and that the misinformation is fought, and some of the things I've heard almost make me mad when I hear about some of these things, that vaccinated people are, you know, this or that. And, so probably we need to step up the quality of the communication and the education worldwide about the facts of this pandemic. And you know, so this isn't going to be the last one. There's going to be another one. Let's take the learnings from this one and be prepared for the next one. So.
And I think this politically speaking, this pandemic has also given rise to hyper nationalism, you know, building of artificial borders. I think what people don't realize is just go back to the vaccine, right? Going back, and I'll take one or two examples, like, you know, a Turkish immigrant family in Germany, BioNTech, right? They founded it. They sat in a German research center, did research, collaborated, thanks to Healthspan, collaborated with Pfizer, okay? And look at AstraZeneca, a Swedish-British company working with Oxford, making vaccines, which are actually being made in India mostly. And so it is the international effort of scientists and governments working together, which is getting us, you know, the solution. So, you know, getting into these small cocoons of hyper-nationalism will never help. And I think we as scientists, you know, we should be very active and vocal in this space, I feel.
You're bringing me around to a question that I wanted to close on, actually, and just I'll put it to you. We're starting to see, or certainly we've seen over the course of pulling together our Healthspan show, we've seen real connectivity from our speakers or our attendees have been from companies, traditional direct-to-consumer FMCG companies, who are really starting to embrace this concept of health and the importance of health. And, you know, we've started throwing around the term, well, is health the new sustainability for businesses? Is it going to become business critical? Maybe as a close, I'd be very interested in both of your thoughts on this concept. You know, how will health continue to evolve as a consumer trend? What sort of impact is that going to have on the sorts of products that FMCG, particularly within beauty and personal care, are developing? And I suppose how you see this evolving. Where would you like to be in 5 years from a health and hygiene perspective?
Yeah,
it's hard.
It's a loaded question.
So I guess it does come back to the topic of this discussion, which is holistic hygiene. You know, if you just park COVID for a while, I know it's very hard to do, but let's just for argument, hygiene is to what end, right? I mean, I know now it's life and death, okay, and in many cases it is life and death all the time, but for a whole lot of people it's not just life and death, but life and lifestyle. Okay, can hygiene be part of the lifestyle, and if so, what kind of hygiene? And that's where I think holistic hygiene comes in. You mentioned about among the geriatric population. So obviously the world's um, population is aging. There's no doubt about it. People are living longer than any time before. So again, what are the solutions for them in terms of holistic health? And how does FMCG play in here? Greg is part of an organization which I know does quite a bit on nutrition as well, right? So how would these nutritional companies play in this, in terms of not just physical health but also mental health? So very interesting area.
I think that the global trend over the next 5 years is the one that started at least 10 or so years ago, and a shift from treatment to prevention, and trying to get ahead of the problems before they become problems. Treating the disease will always be here, but we can do more to prevent and have healthier lives and increase our health span. Not necessarily our lifespan, but increase our health span. So more, as you mentioned, lifestyle changes, nutritional improvements, exercise, all those things that we know may start to get better traction. It'll be disproportionate, and that'll be something that'll have to be overcome. Certain populations don't have the access or resources to certain technologies or products and such. So distribution into those markets will be essential in order for to have a global impact. But prevention will be continue to be, I think, growing market. Products that are preventative and improve overall health of the body. And in my particular field, it's skin health. Yeah. But skin health affects body health, and body health affects skin health. So skin health is, we think of it as kind of like this bag encasing us, but it's talking to our bodies, and our body talks to our skin. So it's all very intertwined, and you have to kind of holistically consider everything when you think about overall health and health span.
Very nicely put. I mean, there's
and if I may just have a minute to build on what Greg was saying, prevention, and it's not just for health, but of course that is the primary objective, but look at the financial incentive in prevention. I think US, for example, if I'm not mistaken, it spends upwards of 10% on its healthcare, and a whole lot of it is actually not in prevention but in treatment. And I think a simple bit of prevention can actually go big time to help in reducing the cost. So there's also a financial incentive for prevention as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there is a reason that we've started this event this week looking at skincare and personal care. And it's because if we think about health and health span holistically, our skin is our largest organ. It's our barrier with the world. really addressing skin health is just of utmost importance if we're starting to look at lifestyle changes and preventative health. Anyway, that 50 minutes has absolutely flown. So we're about to come to a wrap up. Greg and Anindya, I wanted to thank you both so much for your time today and for just giving your insight, your expertise and thoughts to this topic. I'd like to thank you all for watching as well, and of course for being just so interactive and coming to this session with questions. Do stick around. We've got a lot more to address this afternoon, and of course for the whole rest of the week we're looking at all of these different concepts if we're thinking about health as a continuum and the intersection between lots of different fields. But in the meantime, I will let you all get on with your day, and goodbye. And Greg and Anindya, I'll ask you to stay on.